man out on parole, now charged with killing 3 people, had yet another run-in with police.
Disturbing new details about the state parole board letting a triple murder suspect slip through the cracks.
Are we going down the right road? I'm not sure we are.
Voices for Victims, a Way 31 I-Team special report.
Our story moves now to Franklin County, and if you rewind about 30 years, this is really where the story starts. Records obtained by the I-Team here at the Franklin County Courthouse show this is where Jimmy Spencer's long criminal history started. Back in 1989, Spencer broke into a house, but the owner had a gun. He shot Spencer in the shoulder, long before police arrested the already convicted felon. A judge sentenced Spencer to life in prison. As we all know by now, Jimmy Spencer did not spend the rest of his life in prison. Now, the man who shot Spencer almost 30 years ago still fears retaliation, so he didn't want his face to be shown. But he did tell our I-Team's Brecken Terry he should have ended Spencer's life in 1989.
They have failed the state of Alabama completely.
In 1989, this man was at home in Vino when Jimmy Spencer broke in. The victim went on the offensive. He shot Spencer in self-defense.
Do you wish you would have killed him?
I do. That's morbid. It might be someone might consider that morbid, but that is exactly how I feel about it. There is no other way. Vermin like this need to be snuffed out like a candle.
Because of Spencer's already lengthy criminal history, a judge sentenced him to life in prison with the opportunity of parole. In 2008 and 2013, the victim, who doesn't want his identity released, was notified about Spencer's parole hearings. He wrote letters to the parole board to help keep him locked up. But last year, he was not notified about Spencer's 2017 parole hearing. And the Franklin County District Attorney says he wasn't notified either.
It's an insult. This is actually an insult to the people in the state of Alabama that go out and enforce the laws and try to conduct themselves in a proper manner, and even the prisoners that are in prison now that want rehabilitation, and they let scum like this out.
This is where the parole board starts to admit it dropped the ball. The parole board originally told me a law passed in 2015 meant it didn't need to notify Spencer's victim anymore. But lawmakers and the Attorney General's office told me the parole board interpreted the law wrong, and now admits it should have notified Spencer's victim in Franklin County.
That's why we have reverted back to notifying all cases on those burglaries. That is one thing that the executive director put down in a directive, that we were reverting back to the old way of interpretation for the burglary cases, that they would receive notifications.
For this victim, it's too late. The parole board took away his chance to fight to keep Spencer in prison.
No one even looked at his record in the proper manner. The parole board let this slip. They failed to do their job.
Our victim still believes the entire parole board should be gone.
Pack up, go home, get out of Dodge. You don't belong here.
And Brecken joins us now. Now, Brecken, the district attorney here in Franklin County, also believes the parole system dropped the ball.
He does. Franklin County District Attorney Joey Rushing tells me that he was enraged when he found out that Jimmy Spencer was paroled. He actually wrote the parole board multiple letters in 2008 and 2013 asking them to keep him in prison. Now, District Attorney Rushing was also able to show us multiple violations where Spencer broke out of prison and also assaulted another inmate while he was in prison, which just shows how dangerous this man is.
And armed with that information, the Way 31 I-Team started filing multiple open records requests about the parole board and this Jimmy Spencer case. In our first open records request, the parole board said it let him out because of good behavior in prison. It also pointed to this analytical tool. The parole board told Way 31 it uses it as a guide when making decisions. The equation told the parole board there was a low to medium chance of Spencer breaking the law again. After weeks of emailing the governor and Attorney General's office on this case, we finally got a break when the Attorney General's office told us, quote, Spencer was improperly categorized as a non-victim offender. As a result, our Office of Victim Assistance was not alerted to his violent past. This case also raises concerns with the board's risk assessment procedures and whether the implementation of this process is failing the public. Those concerns date back to the Prison Reform Act of 2015. It was designed to reduce Alabama's prisons. That's an actual objective on the parole board's website.
But sources revealed not everyone was on board with these changes. Brecken researched the Prison Reform Act and traveled to Birmingham and Montgomery to plow through the bureaucracy and make sense of it all. She discovered one former parole board member left because of this analytical tool. Brecken tracked him down to get an explanation of how the system failed.
I just did not want an analytical tool trumping my expertise in the system.
Bobby Longshore told me he spent countless hours poring over an inmate's file before reaching a decision to grant parole or not. But Longshore said all of that changed with the Justice Reinvestment Act of 2015. It implemented the Ohio Risk and Needs Assessment System, better known as ORAS, the analytical tool used by the board today.
As I saw that there was a move to place the blame on the parole board for overcrowding and to blame the parole board for failure to fix it. Certain programs were projected and proposed that I could not and did not support.
Basically, the analytical tool takes into account a parole officer's notes on an inmate, among other things, and puts them into categories like you see here: high risk of reoffending or low risk of reoffending.
The analytical tool, which they will tell you right now, is simply a tool to look at, and it's not a guide as to whether someone should be paroled or not. Whether or not that's the way it's being used, I don't know.
The parole board told us it uses the analytical tool two ways: to take into account an inmate's chance of reoffending and if an inmate's granted parole, supervision he or she needs.
Board gets the assessment and they base their decision on the probability that the ORAS assessment dictates for that person, probability of reoffending, and then we do an assessment once they're in the field and determine how their risk of reoffending in the community, and we base our supervision on that.
Earlier this month, the governor put a hold on that system because of the Spencer case.
A few minutes ago, we told you one reason the parole board let Spencer out was his good behavior in prison. But prison records obtained by Way 31's I-Team reveal a very different story. We'll show you how the parole board missed hundreds of pages worth of red flags.